Q Talks with Liz Bailey. Our access to audio programmes are sponsored by Impact Funding Partners, the R.S. McDonald Charitable Trust and the Suter Charitable Trust. To find out more about how to access our services, visit CueAndReview.com or email aaatl@CueAndReview.com. This programme was produced and presented by our Access to Audio Ambassador team leader, Liz Bailey, and edited by our Recruitment Training Officer, Alistair McPhee. Well, hello and welcome back to another edition of Q Talks from CueAndReview Recording Service. As you can see, Liz is not with us today, so instead you've got myself, Alistair McPhee, and I'm joined by Alison and Gillian from Scottish Ward Blinded. And hopefully you've had a wee listen to what we've been saying in part one of the interview, so welcome back to part two, where Alison and Gillian were just finishing off telling me about the joys of acoustic shooting and acoustic archery. But in part two, I mean, one of the things for us at CueAndReview is we've not been in our studios since March. We basically had to close down just shortly before the official announcement of the lockdown. One of the joys for us has actually been retraining all of our team in the last few months to have to work from home. How have you guys found lockdown?
Well, I guess like everybody, we've adapted as best we can, but it hasn't been without its challenges. I think in terms of service, sadly, the centres and the social activities had to be suspended, and that just continues to be the case for the time being. But we didn't want to just stop there. There's plenty of support we have been able to offer, and we have offered to our members. Telephone support was a really big thing, particularly in the early days, and I think going back to kind of March, April time, that telephone support was really significant to help our members sort out the early challenges of having shopping delivered, of having medication delivered, of having those very basic needs met. So that tended to feature in the early part of the kind of phone calls. As the months progressed, it became quite clear that the phone calls were kind of very useful to keep up, to maintain a contact with our members out there. We had some members, and we still have, and the only visits they get are when people come and deliver medication and shopping or maybe home care support. So our kind of regular phone calls are really significant for them to help keep the spirits up, to help, give them something to look forward to. So that's been a really significant and important part of what we do. We've also more recently been able to go out and do visits. We started off and we were doing outdoor visits, and we more recently moved into indoor visits. And I think we all found that a really significant step, because it's been a tough few months for our members out there, and actually to meet and be with our staff again was of huge significant importance to them.
How have you coped with going back into visits? Have you found people have been fearful? I've seen the RNIB campaign about keeping 2 meters apart. What is it? Give me space.
Yeah, of course.
How has that worked?
Well, we've been very mindful, obviously, of the government guidelines that are out there, and made sure we keep up to date with all the changes, because they change, week on week they change. We make sure we socially distance from our people's houses. We make sure we're wearing PPE. We only visit once a day, so the staff can go back home and, change and clean to absolutely minimise any chance of kind of passing on risk to our members or to the staff. But it's been challenging going into somebody's home. As I say, we work very often with older people, and we make sure before we visit, we phone them, we go through what to expect during a visit. We ask, obviously, are there any kind of symptoms in the house? Is there any kind of illness we need to know about? We're very careful with our members. They're very precious to us. So we've done it cautiously. But I'm very glad to say we have been able to do it, to go out and see the members, because for them to be able to see our staff has just been a huge benefit to them.
I must admit, particularly when I saw this sort of 2 meters apart, and there was a wonderful interview on Kay Adams on BBC Radio Scotland, where a blind lady had said that people were being abusive towards her because she didn't know. I mean, she was totally blind, didn't know what 2 meters was. She didn't know that there was somebody approaching her and all these sorts of things. Have you found that quite tough? Have you had visually impaired people saying to you, how do I know what 6 feet is, you know?
Oh, very much so. And, you know, listening to the feedback and speaking to staff, members' experience going back out into the community it's been a challenging one.
Yeah.
I'll give the example of going to GP. Very often GPs will have big signs up indoors saying where to queue, how to queue, the distance to, you know, for people to stand, you know, apart from each other. That's very hard, as you'll know, for somebody with a sight loss to read that information, and even if they can read the information, to then see the markers on the ground, on the door,
Yeah.
or going into GP surgery. It's all changed. There are ways of, you know, there are directions of travel, and it's very hard for somebody with sight loss to feel confident to actually go back into that kind of situation and feel, you know, confident. They won't kind of, you know, bump into somebody or get too close.
Yeah.
So that's been a very real experience. Likewise, going shopping, you know, people with sight loss get to know their local kind of shops, they know the staff there, they know the way it works, but that's all been changed very much on account of the restrictions that have been put in place, which just adds to the challenge of it all.
Well, the main thing that I'm fascinated by is we're doing this interview in Zoom. We've been able to keep in touch that way. How have your clients and how have the residents at your homes, how have they kept in touch with their families?
Well, I think like all organisations, each organisation has had their own kind of rules and restrictions they need to kind of work by. And that's been a moving picture as well. I think we've tried to be creative in what we do. I think as an organisation, we very much recognise the importance of our members having contact with family and friends, and it can make a huge difference to their well-being. So we've kind of adapted accordingly, is what I would say. Yes, we do have care homes and we do have the centres and we do have other parts of the organisation. We've just been closely following government guidelines, but trying to actively, you know, allow our members to meet up with those that are important to them.
And it's took a bit of thinking outside the box, really, hasn't it? I think we've all tried to get very creative with what we're doing. I mean, some of our staff, we had ukulele lessons going on in the centre prior to COVID, and I know one of my staff was on doing WhatsApp video calls and phone calls, trying to provide ukulele lessons over the phone and music quizzes. We've tried to use social media as much as possible, but obviously social media can be difficult to navigate if you have sight loss as well. So a lot of our members don't use it, but as much as possible, we're trying to just get creative and listen to our members. Really is the biggest thing. We, as an organisation, we are very member led, and we try to listen to the wants and needs of the members anyway, but particularly through this period, it's been really important to really have those conversations about their anxieties, their fears, what they need from us, and really ensure that we are still, although we were in lockdown and we're facing new restrictions, it's keeping those good relationships with our partners as well, to make sure that we know what our members need and that we can try and provide that. If we can't, then we know who can, and trying to link in with our partners as much as possible.
Well, of course, one of the reasons we are heavily involved with yourselves is the Talking Newspaper app from the British Wireless Fund for the Blind. And I know that some of your staff at Hawkhead, in fact, one of the residents' family took in a tablet. So as the resident could do a Facebook calls or iPad calls or whatever with their family. But as a result, they were then able to get access to our service on the app. And again, some of the feedback we got from our own volunteers, we were constantly reading headlines about, you know, COVID-19 : and then a heading, and it was always so depressing that we started actually trying to find more good news stories within the newspapers, and that must be tough for you guys as well. I mean, do you find yourself censoring in any way what you're telling people about what's going on out with their homes, or are you having to be quite upfront in the midst of lockdown?
We have to run with what it is our members need, and if our members need information, we'll give them information. If our members need a cheer up, we'll give them a cheer up. You know, we just run really with what it is they need, and that can change week to week as well. yeah, so it's an individual basis we do that. But of course, we you know, it's hard when there is such a lot of information out there. People can become overloaded and then weary of the information. So we listen very clearly to what it is they need from us, and we run with that. Yeah.
Things as simple as our rehab. And at the centres here, we have IT support for members. So as an organisation, we're able to provide our members with, like you said, Alistair, things like tablets and iPad surfaces or phones that just for those people that don't have that kind of access to that equipment will allow them the opportunity to communicate with family, with loved ones, or with ourselves if we're the only contact that they have. And we have a few staff dotted about the country that can provide real IT support to assist them remotely, to get online, to try and help them navigate through the Zooms and the WhatsApps and the whatever else.
Whatever the latest one is, yeah. I mean, I was only just getting to grips with TikTok, and I gather somebody's going to buy it over shortly. So not that you want to see me dancing, don't worry. But I mean, basically, I think that where I was going there with how the various mediums that you're using to keep in touch is, how do people get in touch with you guys? What is the current way to get in touch with you? Do we still phone you? Do we email? How do we get in touch?
I mean, I think we're very keen to let people know we are still very much open for a huge amount of business that we normally do, and I suppose a big part of what I probably haven't emphasised enough is we have still been able to provide our members with really important equipment to allow them to kind of maintain their independence at home. So we are still doing all that. We're still being able to phone, provide equipment. If we can't go visit, we'll phone, we'll find out what they need, and we'll send it to them, and we'll talk them through it when they receive it. So it's a huge part of what we do. So absolutely want organisations out to know that Scottish Warblinders are very much still open for business as much as we can be. So what I would say, any veteran living with a sight loss, or any family member or friend or a professional contact who knows that person, please give us a call. We've got a free phone number on 0800 035 6409, or we can be emailed at hello@scottishwarblinded.org. And any more general information about our organisation can be found on www.scottishwarblinded.org. So please feel free. We are accepting referrals. We have done throughout. As I say, some of our services are restricted, but equally we are providing a really important service for many of our members out there. So please keep referrals coming. We will still respond to them as quickly as we can, and get some support out there to those veterans living with sight loss.
Fantastic. Well, Gillian, Alison, thank you so much for talking to us today. And I don't know if this is a reflection of me or whether it's a reflection of you guys, but this is the first ever two-parter that we've ever done on Q Talks. So thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure, Alistair. Nice meeting you.
Q Talks with Liz Bailey. Our access to audio programmes are sponsored by Impact Funding Partners, the RS McDonald Charitable Trust and the Suter Charitable Trust. To find out more about how to access our services, visit CueAndReview.com or email aaatl@CueAndReview.com. This programme was produced and presented by our Access to Audio Ambassador team leader, Liz Bailey, and edited by our Recruitment Training Officer, Alistair McPhee.